sleep also helps prevent depression, specifically when you look at the timing of your sleep. So there was a paper that came out of the Broad Institute at MIT and Harvard, and the University of Colorado partnered on it. And they looked at, it was over 600,000 people in the UK Biobank. They had 23andMe in data. They had these wearable track. It was a very robust study. And they found that when you shift your sleep schedule back 1 hour, so let's say you're going to bed at 1 and you go to bed at 12 instead, you reduce your risk of major depression by 23%.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to Something for Everybody. My name is Aaron Machbitz. Dr. Erik, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. First and most important question I'll ask you is, how are you doing? Like, for real, Dr. Erik, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I would say that I'm a mixed bag, kind of like everybody else. I've got some really good things going on. I've got some things going on in my head that, we all have to deal with every day, but I would say for the most part, I would just say I'm blessed. Despite any circumstance going on in my life, I feel a deep sense of gratitude that I have a wonderful family. I have a great community, and I feel like I'm doing what I'm called to do right now.
I am fully in alignment with that exact thing. Like I've been saying a lot recently that I feel like I'm the luckiest man in the world, and I don't know why I feel that way, but it just like everything seems great. Like I'm about to get married. I moved into a new house. Like I have great health. My parents live right down the street. Like I have great friends. Like I'm doing what I get to freaking talk to you for a job, like crazy stuff. But but it's all part of sort of the entrepreneurial journey, which I wanted to talk to you about because I know you're in a new venture. And if you look at social media, everyone talks about how sexy it is to be an entrepreneur. And well, sometimes it's really freaking hard. And maybe talk about your experience, with your company AIM7 and what that's been like for you.
There has been nothing easy about this at all. I haven't experienced the sexy part or the glamorous part. I think what people refer to when they say there's this, glamorous part of being an entrepreneur, it's either these venture-backed companies with millions of dollars in venture capital that are, and with that comes very difficult expectations that you have to grow now and grow fast. And then if you don't, they'll just spit you out. I would say my entrepreneurial journey has been like taking your face and putting it on cement and then slowly dragging it on cement for about a mile. And it's just getting beat up and chewed up. So I have experienced a lot of joy in the process though. I have met some amazing people. I've learned a lot about myself, my wife, how awesome she is, even more so. I've experienced what it's like to build something that truly impacts somebody on like a very deep human level. I've learned what it's like to almost run out of money and to not know where your next check's coming from. I've learned there's just a lot, I've learned what it's like to go from 0 to almost 1, I would say right now. I've learned what it means to pivot, what it means to quit, and quitting isn't a bad word all the time. So I've learned a lot. When I was in sports, it's very interesting. A lot of football coaches or coaches, military leaders, coaches, and entrepreneurs, like these CEOs, leaders are like, they glean principles from each other. And I think there is like overarching principles to leadership and organizational dynamics. But I really learned like kind of how cushy it was in sports. Even if you got the hard part is the volatility that you're going to get fired the next season. That's not cushy or fun. But coaches, like let's say you're at the Division I level or the NFL, they walk in, and as hard as it is to draft talent or acquire talent and build, they have a budget, they have facilities, they don't have to worry about keeping the lights on. It's like all laid out. Like when you're an entrepreneur, it's like there's absolutely nothing. You are in a desert, now build an oasis. Go. Like there's a whole nother level of appreciation I have for people. Do you ever listen to Guy Raz's How I Built This?
I have not.
Great podcast. It's about like founders, and actually recently I was listening to one about a guy, Jeremy Ballard, who I actually went to college with, and he built a company called Icon. And he was talking about how they 3D print homes, and it's crazy what they're doing. And before they blew up and really got big, there was a point where he went to his wife. He's like, I'm going to have to get 2 more credit cards and max these out immediately. Are you in with me? Like, those are the kind of conversations you have to have. Like, we're draining our savings account. Are you okay?
Yeah.
You know, I was listening to one with the guy that started MGA Entertainment, which is like one of the largest toy companies. It's the largest privately held toy company in the United States. This guy came from Iran with nothing. And, you know, you listen to these stories, and he really went from zero, nothing in his pocket, to building this multi-billion-dollar empire. And when you listen to those stories, you're like, I don't know. There's just something about this journey that's inspiring, but also just soul crushing at the same time.
Yes. Yes to that last part. Like, but I mean, I think the bright line that runs through all people who stick it out just long enough is that it's anchored to the biggest purpose that they can think of. And for me, I was, willing to talk to nobody for as long as it took. And for you, you're willing to do almost whatever it takes. Not everything, right? You wouldn't sacrifice your family, your kids, but I imagine based on what I know about you and all that stuff. But you have this main purpose that is so bright that you're able to work through the trenches and have so much time under tension, and you have this belief in the back of your mind that, man, like, it'll probably work out. It'll probably work out. It's going to suck, but it'll probably work out. And at least that's what I found, like being in sport and talking to so many people and all this cool stuff.
Yeah, my purpose is to help empower people to live healthy and impactful lives, and to use my talents, gifts, and abilities to do that. And so, however that shapes, whatever the shape that forms into, I'm okay with. And one of the things I had to learn early on was I have an idea of what I want to do, and not being so stubborn that I have to hold on to the final product that I think it should look like. You know the story of Slack, right? Slack, the B2B SaaS tool that people use, communication in office. Do you know what I'm talking about, Aaron?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Slack I think they sold for $20 billion. It was originally a failed game company.
Whoa.
So it was supposed to be an endless game. And this guy raised all this money, and one day he's looking at the cost of acquisition to lifetime value, and he's like, this isn't going to work. Called the investors, said, I'm sending the money back. And they're like, no, what are you doing? He's like, this is not going to work. He quit, he was smart, and it was the wise decision. But as they were shutting the company down, they only had a few employees left. He's like, hey, wait a second. Don't we have this thing? The acronym was Slack. It was some type of communication system. He's like, I think that could be a product. And now it's a $20 billion company that was sold. We use it. When I started AIM7, I was, the fundamental principle hasn't changed. We wanted to turn wearable data into ultra personalized solutions to help people look, feel, and perform their best. It took 2.5 years to build the tech. We put it out in the market. We started getting some good adoption. People's lives literally were changing. We now have data to show that after 90 days, people were experiencing a 20% reduction in stress, 19% reduction in soreness, like double-digit improvements in mood, energy, sleep, like just amazing. But we didn't have like 10,000 customers, which is what we needed, right? And so it's hard to break through the noise. And then somebody introduced us to pickleball. And then we met the CEO of a company called Duper, which is like the scoring system for pickleball internationally. And it's like the rating system. So if you want to play the game, if you want to enter a tournament, if whether you're like just a regular Joe amateur to a pro, you have to have a Duper rating. And they have like, I think 500,000 users, 260,000 monthly active users. So, long story short, they looked at this and was like, man, there is nothing like this for pickleball. People are getting injured. They need these solutions. Nobody has been the health and fitness solution for them. So we made the decision to niche down and serve that audience. And we just kind of went with this, like, I don't know, full bore about 3 months ago, and had to build all sorts of new content. The core tech didn't change, but that was a really gutsy move on the team. You know, I looked at the team, I was like, you look for a blue ocean, it's a subset of the market. Let's go serve these people. And we're starting to get some traction, and we're starting to get feedback, and we partner with some of the top players in the world, and it's just like, I feel like it's starting to happen. We're now the first pickleball fitness app in the App Store, which is kind of cool to be the first, you know. And anyways, it's been an interesting, wild ride.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because I was looking at your website and I saw pickleball and was interested to know how you got there. Pickleball is, man, they say it's the fastest growing sport in America, so I think you might have found the golden nugget, my friend.
45 million people played it last year, 3 years in a row. It's the fastest growing sport. It's a $65 billion market. It's crazy. It really is. It's like, but have you ever played?
No, I have not yet.
Man, it's like this, it's the ultimate community game. No matter, like, anybody can play. It's I don't know, there's just so much about it that is just so welcoming, and people really get addicted to it for the right reasons, because they show up, they feel encouraged. I've played with people all over the state of Texas. I'm not that great, I'm getting better, but no matter, it's like, you're part of us. It's like the new CrossFit, but anybody can join. And
Mm.
whether you're big, skinny, you know, have no hair like me, have lots of beautiful hair like you, it doesn't really matter. It's like, it's wild. And the mental health benefit, I think we're going to find a lot of interesting things out about this game. So I don't know, I feel very blessed.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm gonna make a hard left here because I'm
Sure.
great at podcast transitions. So here's one right here for you. um, but how does our sleep impact our ability to handle stress?
Yeah, so sleep is our primary recovery mechanism, and it impacts every single level of our functioning and physiology. Um, from our ability to, pardon me, have mood appropriate behaviors. So, like, when you're sleep deprived, you don't tend to be your best self. You can't read people's body language very well. So you can imagine the downstream effects of how your reactions when you're not, you know, really cognitively in the best situation. Um, it basically sets your body up for an environment of adaptation. And so you're either adapting to stress or maladapting to stress. If you're adapting, you're getting better and getting stronger and thriving. If you're maladapting, you're getting sick, injured, or you eventually die. That's how we die. We can't adapt to the stress of life anymore, and then we die. And so when you sleep, there are a lot of things that happen. Um, uh, you have certain hormones that are released, like growth hormone, which actually helps with tissue repair and regeneration. In the early phases of sleep, specifically slow wave sleep early in the night, you get this big pulse of growth hormone. Later on, when you sleep, during sleep, specifically in the later stages of REM sleep, is when, for men, most of our testosterone is released. So you can actually predict testosterone levels in older men by looking at sleep fragmentation. Also, when you sleep, your immunological defense systems are really cranked up. So during the day, these stress systems are turned on, which is great. That's what allows you. Stress is really our brain and our body preparing us to do something effortful. That's what my friend Dr. Alex Auerbach has coined. I love that phrase. It makes it kind of puts stress in the correct light. So this branch of our nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system is typically turned on a little bit more. And there's certain hormones that we have big pulses in, like cortisol, which is, quote, stress hormone, but we actually need it to be alert and awake. But at nighttime, these systems start to dial down. Cortisol goes down, hopefully. If not, you're in a pathological state. But then your immune system cranks up, and it actually creates immunological memory, which allows your body to know, like, what, kind of creates this understanding of foreign invaders that came in during the day, and then it can, quickly neutralize them in the future. So you have like this kind of immunological benefit that's also happening. Sleep also helps prevent depression, specifically when you look at the timing of your sleep. So there was a paper that came out of the Broad Institute at MIT and Harvard, and the University of Colorado partnered on it. And they looked at, it was over 600,000 people in the UK Biobank. They had 23andMe data. They had these wearable track. It was a very robust study. And they found that when you shift your sleep schedule back 1 hour, so let's say you're going to bed at 1 and you go to bed at 12 instead, you reduce your risk of major depression by 23%. What they basically found is like people that go to bed earlier and wake up earlier have less risk of depression. Well, why is that? Because of what they think is because of these circadian processes. People that wake up earlier tend to get more natural sunlight exposure. What does that do? When we see sun, specifically in early parts of the day, it anchors or synchronizes our circadian rhythm through this little thing that sits above the roof of your mouth called a suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the circadian pacemaker. And when that's activated, it kicks off this cascade of like hormonal and neurological events that improve your mood, push back on depression, help you be more alert and focused. And also it kind of sets you up for a normal sleep rhythm. And I guess I'll just say kind of this last thing, like there's good literature to demonstrate that kind of when we get enough sleep, especially this 7 to 9 hour window, it helps prevent things like type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So there's so many things that sleep does. It really, for me, kind of creates the conditions for adaptability.
Yeah, so I mean, outside of the obvious of telling people to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep,
Yeah.
what else can they do to try and bring themselves back down, calm their nervous system a little bit as they're preparing for sleep, or preparing to get into their bed?
Yeah, well, let's just kind of look at a 12, or let's look at a 16-hour day. Like you wake up in the morning. One of the most important things you can do throughout the day is move and get outside. So you want to create a hunger for sleep. So if you're sedentary all day and you've eaten lots of food and you haven't really moved, you don't really need, you don't feel the need to sleep unless it's just been an incredibly stressful, stressful day. So you need to move a lot. So take frequent breaks throughout the day and walk. One of the best things you can do for somebody that's having a hard time sleeping is go, okay, how many steps are you walking? 8,000? Let's get to 10. 10 didn't do it. Let's get to 15 or 20. So you create a physical need that kind of helps trigger sleep. Getting as much natural sunlight exposure. There was a new paper that just came out. It was done in elderly populations because they're the ones that suffer the most from fragmented sleep. And they showed that people that got more midday sunlight had less fragmented sleep at night, meaning they weren't waking up as frequently. Very interesting. This all goes back to this kind of circadian process. So as much sunlight as you can get. I keep a window open, although it doesn't give you the same benefits. In the morning, I go on a walk. I try to go on a walk after every meal. Today, I'm not going to work out, but I'm going to put on a weighted vest and go walk for an hour. around 5 o'clock. Then I would say you definitely want to avoid alcohol later in the day. Not that you should be drinking in the morning, but although it may, sedate you a little bit, your sleep is terrible. It's going to be hard to get deep sleep. It's going to fragment your sleep. You're going to be spending more time in these lighter sleep stages. And then, one of the things I think that we all, I should say a lot of people fall prey to, and even myself sometimes, is looking at social media before you go to bed. And it's not so much the light that I'm concerned about. It's the emotional stimulation that you get from looking at these videos. Even if it's a educational thing, it's like, you get on YouTube and you start watching this, and all of a sudden you go from being exhausted to like wired, right? So move as much as you can, get as much sunlight as you can, create a hunger for sleep. And then just avoid some of the common sense things at night, before you go to bed. Alcohol, social media. And then outside of that, if you still have a hard time, if you're like an insomniac, you definitely need to go see a doctor.
Yeah, where does eating close to bed play? Like, what have you seen in the literature there?
This is kind of an emerging thing. Personally, I have to eat early. If I eat close to bedtime, even 3 hours before bed, my heart rate variability is terrible. So if you know what HRV is, it's heart rate variability is the measurement of time between heartbeats measured in milliseconds. The more variability between heartbeats, the more your body is in more what's called a parasympathetic state, or it's kind of a more of this rest digest state. Your heart rate can be elevated because now your body's dealing with a stressor, food. It's having to digest. We do know that, so melatonin is increased at night. It does seem that when melatonin increases, your body is basically not expecting to be eating, and so it's not as sensitive to glucose uptake, and so you can have elevated blood sugar, which then starts kind of kicking down all these different pathways of just increasing systemic inflammation and stress. I recommend, if you do have to eat, go on a nice long walk when you're done. I try to eat no later than 6. And in our family, as much as we can, like, we're busy. My wife coaches baseball and jujitsu, and she's really the coach, which is kind of funny. So whenever we can, we try to go on a family walk at night.
Yeah, your wife sounds like me. I coach baseball and do jujitsu, so I'm sure we'd get along swimmingly. But
That's awesome.
yeah,
She's taken. She's taken.
No, just I understand. I understand.
You're getting married.
Yeah, I am. But I like doing my own like personal research. I found when me and my fiance eat around 6:15, 6:30, I get the best sleep. I'm able to like wind down by about 8:30 and fall asleep by about 9:15 ish. And my Oura ring tells me that I'm doing well. When I have baseball practice late and I don't get home till 8, that means I'm eating at 8:30 and still trying to go to sleep at 9. It just doesn't work. I'm too ramped up. I just coached kids. I'm excited. We had a great practice, and I'm putting food in my belly because I don't want to wake up at 3 in the morning, like with my stomach hurting or whatever the case may be. So and obviously based on those factors, I get not as quality of sleep, and I still try to wake up at the same time every day just to make sure that my timing is good, but I can notice it completely just on my own personal research.
Yeah, I mean, everybody needs to just pay attention to their bodies. That's another great thing about these wearables is if you know the right information to look at, or if you use a system like AIM7 or something, you can start to see, oh, wow. Like for us, we make it really simple. We're like, hey, your body's stressed out and here's why. And then you can start to go, oh, wait, this is what I did last night. My body's not in a great position. Now I can course correct on that. If you do have, like, I like to eat a big breakfast, a smaller lunch, but I don't like to eat carbs at breakfast for me because it like makes me feel fatigued. I actually like to eat my carbs at night or my last meal because then it kind of calms me down. So, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a bigger meal or whatever around 6 o'clock. Just give everybody's a little bit different. But like I find like when it's date night and we go out and eat late, it's just bad. Like the next day is just I feel terrible. So I'd rather like get an early date night started like around 5 o'clock. Um, you know, and then have time to kind of just chill.
Yeah. How are you teaching your children the importance of sleep, and what are some of the biggest movers that you want them to understand potentially when they go to college and you're not around to maybe um, guide them in their sleeping habits?
Yeah, you know, I don't right now. I mean, I have a 12, an 8, and a 4 year or almost 4 year old. So there's not a whole lot of like, let's talk about your circadian rhythm stuff going on. But it's a lot of like, get outside. Like my oldest son, like is kind of an engineering type, you know, really enjoys building. But I'm like, I walk in, I'm like, hey dude, like you've been working on this project. I want you to go outside and get 3 laps around the block and get some sunlight. Sometimes he'll do that. Sometimes he'll just go out and jump on the trampoline. I'm like, great, awesome, you know. My middle son is just outside and he goes to bed in 2 seconds and wakes up at 6 o'clock like a vampire, just like ready to go, you know. You know. And then my oldest son's just different. Like I like last night, you know, we try not to let our kids watch a ton of TV. And my wife told him he could watch a little TV while he was waiting for his brother to get home from a baseball game. He went to see his friend. So it was 9 o'clock. I'm like, hey, listen, buddy, I think you should go to bed. He's like, but mom said I could watch TV. I was like, listen, you got a math test tomorrow, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, and you know how you feel when you need more sleep than most people, right? He's more like me. He's like, yes. I was like, so how are you going to feel if you're tired tomorrow and don't do great on your math test? Would you rather get a good night's sleep and feel good about yourself? It's a long weekend and you can. He's like, I was like, so the choice is up to you. And he made the right choice, you know. So I'm trying to like give him the you know the tools he needs and just trying to get them in a rhythm of doing life a certain way.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, slowly but surely building the appropriate habits over time.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. I read this book called Tiny Habits by this guy named BJ Fogg, and I think the
Great book.
best, yeah, the best habit insight is make your habits too small to fail. And I think that's extremely important to all the things that you just mentioned when you're trying to develop these habits. Like for people who want to start an exercise routine or any sort of routine, it's like, I've never worked out before, so I'm going to work out for 60 minutes, 5 days a week. Like that's hard for people who fucking love the gym. You know what I mean? Um, so I always say, like, why not tell yourself that you're going to do one push up one time a week? That's too small to fail. And I guarantee you can check that box. Boom, you did it. Okay, what's next? And most people, when they're down on the floor, they're going to get a few bonus reps in because they already went down to the floor. So even though you
Mm.
said you want to do one, that's your goal, you probably did 3 or 4. And then you slowly build from there because, like, all of these lifestyle or habits that you want to do to improve yourself have to be an endlessly evolving process, not just like I'm going to do it for 3 months and then I'm good forever. Like if you want longevity, like I think they have to be extended. You know, we have to have a longer term horizon for these habits and building sleep and being stress resilient and, you know, building our adaptive capacity, as you like to call it.
I'm with you, man. I love that book. Floss one tooth, you know, and then add another one. That's one of his things in the book. I think it's a brilliant concept. And when you want to build a habit, I think one of the things that we've learned too is values-based decision making.
Mm,
That's one of the things we baked into our app, and that was from Dr. Peter Haberl, who's on our team. But you know, everybody, he says he was the former senior psychologist for the U.S. Olympics, and he said that every athlete says they want to win a gold medal, but then you start asking them why, and then if you can get down to their core values, and why they do what they do, and then you can link their values to the actions that they have to take, people are more likely to consistently take action when emotion enters the equation. It's like, I am doing this because I value excellence. when you have to do the hard thing and you can, or I do it because I value faith or my family or whatever it is, um, now it's you're linking these actions to things that are the core of who you are. That takes things to another level. So I think that's, tiny habits are important, and then understanding like why you're doing it and being conscientious of that. And then like BJ says, he says celebrate all of these things. I think at the very beginning that can be helpful, but really just acknowledging it and then celebrating the big moments. For me, that's something that we really value, is like, just take a second and be like, you know what, I did a good job. Like,
Yeah.
I did a good job. And then when you have a big moment, like, you should really celebrate those, because we talk about being an entrepreneur. The big, great moments don't come around very long. They're very often. It's like you feel like you're going from valley to valley instead of peak to peak.
Yeah. I teach my athletes when they do something that they said they were going to do, or they made a great play, or they performed their process or whatever, simply just tell themselves, that's like me. That's like me. That's like me. And I've used that to help them celebrate in the moment. Like, you said you were going to grab a tutor because you're struggling in this class. You said you were going to take 15 minutes to do an extra piece of work. You said you were going to do this process to get ready for your at bat, or whatever. You said you were going to, be nicer to your teammates, whatever the case may be. There could be a 100 things, but right in the moment, you're like, yep, that's like me. And then when you get to the bigger moments, like you win a championship, or you graduate high school, or, you start a business, or whatever the case may be, you're more inclined to actually celebrate that, because you've done it so many times leading up to that it feels awesome in that moment, but you don't get too high about it, and you can sort of continue going about your work. And that's worked for, I work with younger athletes, and it's really worked well for them.
I love that. I'm going to steal that and give you attribution for it.
I don't need the attribution, but please
you
use
need
it.
the
Go
attribution.
ahead.
I think that's good. I love it. That's like me, because that's a very good affirmation and kind of anchor to the type of person you want to be.
Yeah, because we know that repeated behavior is rewarded, and so I want to have effort all the time, and if I want to have that sort of effort, I got to reward it, and it can't always be from an outside source, because I'm not always going to be around. And working in professional sport for a really long time, these people put in like a lot of work over a long period of time, and there's a dark side to becoming the best at something, and I'd like to touch on that too. But I think that recognition is really quite important. But
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about the dark side?
Yeah. Speaking of that, like, because I work in youth sports, and so I think parents very rarely, especially when they have young kids, like I coach a 9-year-old team, so their baseball experience or their sport experience is very limited, and so they want to push, but they don't know the sacrifices that must be made to make it to a really high level. And most kids quit youth sports at age 13, and that's just something that I find very tragic and heartbreaking. Like, maybe you can stop when you get to high school, but we at least got to play through 14. Not because like sports are everything, but they teach you the appropriate lessons. But anyways, working in where you worked with Olympic athletes, gold medalists, championship teams, what do you see as the dark side of getting to that level?
Well, let me say one thing about youth sport really quick.
Please.
Research does show that early specialization does not help you out when you want to be an elite champion. The only sports where early specialization is very important is sports where there's a time limit on it. So, for instance, like gymnastics, where prepubescent girls typically are the ones that are elite gymnasts, right? There's a ticking clock.
Right.
Now there's a ticking clock on everything, but most athletes, their prime is in their 20s, even to early 30s now. So, with youth sport like baseball play, like Aaron Judge, I think was a 3-sport all-state player. And you look every year at the NFL Combine and the draft. This year, when the draft happens, I want you to go look. You'll find an article that shows all these players and how many sports they played in high school. The most important thing to be developing at a young age are the things like discipline and self-efficacy, and then the ability to move in space, power, speed, general proprioception, the ability to understand where they are, and then develop fundamental skills. So my wife coaches a select or travel baseball 8U team, but I'll just say, like, when she was an All-American softball player in college, and she was coaching a rec team, and people were like, "Oh, you're pretty good at this." And then the local select team was like, travel ball organization was like, "Hey, we'd like you to coach this team." And she's like, "Nah, I'm not into all that craziness. Like, I went through this, not at this age." And they're like, "Well, if you're the coach, you get to choose how often they practice, and you get to choose." And we're like, so we kind of looked at each other and we're like, "Sweet, they practice twice a week. That's it." I think last spring, I think they lost like a couple games. The first fall they were way behind everybody. And that spring they like had a really great spring, and now they upped them to the next level, or whatever, AAA or whatever it is. And then, we come out the gates, everybody's already played 10 or 15 games. First weekend they got blown out. Next weekend they split the games. It's like, but my point is like, at the early ages, you can burn a kid out and they will resent you for it forever. And in these countries, like China and Russia, were winning at the world class level or Olympic level. It's more of a form of political warfare than it is. That is the whole point of that. China is spending billions of dollars on their Olympic systems because it's political warfare. It's back to the Cold War. They will do whatever it takes to assert dominance. And so they will take you from your family, and they don't care about burnout. And then when you're done, you're done. So, anywho, when it comes to being elite, there is a level of extreme dedication to your craft that it's going to take. And the hours and time that's placed into that should scale over time. What I think most people get wrong, especially in the high school level, is they overcook these kids. My friend Mark McLaughlin, if you want to see an example of one of the absolute best strength conditioning coaches in America, he's in the state of Oregon. He's worked with some of the best athletes in the world, and he's at a high school now. And what he's able to squeeze out of these kids is absolutely ridiculous. The outputs that these kids can generate. And I had him on my podcast, The Blueprint, recently, and we kind of talked about this, and I was just like, "What's the secret, man?" He's like, "We don't overcook them. Like, we give them the right dose, and we're really paying attention to how they're adapting. And if they're adapting faster, we give them more. And if they're adapting at a slower pace, it's slow it down. And we don't shove it down their throats, because if you microwave the process, you will get a microwave product." Mm-hmm. Imagine, Aaron, we're in Texas, and we went to like Black's Barbecue in Austin or Franklin's, and Franklin took the brisket and stuck it in the microwave and then put it on our plate. First, we'd be very disappointed that we sat there for 4 hours and waited, and it would taste awful. It takes time. And I think, and then if you do too much too soon, you're going to, the system, the body doesn't have time to adapt. The tissues don't have time to adapt. So guess what's going to happen? It's going to break. And you have these kids with all these crazy slap tears and all this stuff at like 15, Tommy John at 16. And you're like, what in the world? That they've, now I will say this. On the flip side, most of these parents think their kids are going to the major leagues and are getting a college scholarship. They should all say to themselves right now, my son or daughter is not playing in college, and my son or daughter will never make it to the pros. In that case, there are some techniques and some things that could be used in early high school to let them peak in high school, because then it's going to be over with. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Mark does some things like depth jumping and things like that I would typically reserve for later. And he's like, I mean, it's not like the point was, he's like, Erik, most of these, he goes, I can look at the entire group and be like, that one kid may go play D2. That's it. So this is it for them. So we're going to do some things around their junior, senior year that kind of push them a little bit and kind of eke out that last bit of, that sponge. But if I have a college team, freshman year, I'm going to start escalating it sophomore year, junior and senior year, man, we're going to be doing stuff because that's it. And the few people that may be able to eke through, it's, going from college to the NFL is it's a totally different football game. They're no longer fat. Like, the fastest they'll ever be is their last year of college. Their processing speed goes through the roof. The game moves so much faster in the NFL, not because people are hitting higher top end speeds. Its space closes so quickly because they can anticipate so much faster. So like, it's like a vacuum. Anyways, I went on there for a little while.
No, I want all the long tangents that you have to offer there, Dr. Erik. But it's interesting because, like, a lot of coaches that I run into, and especially when I was playing in college, like, they'll do what they have on the practice plan no matter how the athletes feel. And I think that's the wrong approach. Like, I know sometimes you need to get certain things done, I understand, but you have to also take a temperature check of what's going on with your players, because if they're not going to respond to what you're trying to coach or teach, whether that's on the field or in the weight room, then you're just going to have to keep repeating this process over and over again. Then everyone gets frustrated because we have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So having a way to gauge how your players feel, what their school is like that day, potentially, asking them actual questions about who they are as human beings, that all relays into performance. And I think some coaches who I know are extremely busy, I get that, but if you care about your job, honestly, you care about winning is probably the most important thing for you, because that's how you keep your job. How you win is you take care of your athletes, because they're the ones who are performing on the field. And so I think coaches can potentially learn that. And I know that's something that goes into what you guys have built, that there's a questionnaire that people can do when they wake up to gauge, what might be happening with them, how they feel, even mentally, which I think is massive and so important. And really glad you put that into your program, but something that coaches could do also.
Yeah, 100%. Like, so this wellness questionnaire is what you're referring to. Is you ask people about their mood and energy and sleep, stress, soreness, motivation, etc. It's what's called a modified Hooper-McKinnon questionnaire. And then what you're looking is for deviations from the normal response that are significant. So you have to do a little math on that. But if you don't have all that, you can just ask them, or you can just watch and be intuitive. I know one college coach that would always go to where the athletes were being, the dining hall, and during training camps, he would just sit there and watch the players walk in while he was scripting practice. So he was intuitively understanding like what was going on. In track and field, now granted, this is not a team sport. When you're warming up the athlete, you can watch and listen, and you can see if things are firing or not. If you're hearing their feet too much on the ground, that means that they're not as reactive, and you may shut it down early. Now with football, there's something called preparedness and readiness. Readiness is biologically, are you ready to perform? Preparedness is, do you have the technical, tactical skills and know how to actually go out and do what you got to do. So in football, you got to like install the game plan. You got to go run the new plays. You got to be ready for what the offense is going to do from a defense perspective. You got to know adjustments. So that's preparedness. But if you overcook the athletes, then they're not ready. So you could be prepared and not ready. If you underdo it, you can be ready and not prepared. There's a lot that goes to like over time, slowly bringing, how much the athlete can handle to a higher and higher level. And then as the season goes on, what power speed athletes don't need as much of during the season, they need They need less volume, but the intensity needs to stay high. Too much volume for a power speed athlete is the death of a power speed athlete. So like they can only do, there's only so many reps in the tank.
Right.
So I know of some NFL teams of which are going really deep in the playoffs. This is part of their how they're doing this, as far as they have good talent, but they're keeping the players fresh by keeping intensity high, but keeping the volume low. As the season goes on, the volume gets lower and lower and lower because they're fit from the game. Now it's like, how much of the playbook or game plan needs to change every week? What do we have to do, and at what tempo and speed to make sure that it's sharp and ready to go so that we're ready and prepared on game day?
Yeah. I mean, I know you talk about having reps in reserve, and I think that's important. I talk about that with my baseball boys. Like, you don't need to go to failure. Like, it's okay. Like, especially if your form is getting, compromised by it. Like, have 2 or 3 reps maybe in the tank. Would you say is appropriate?
Yeah, if we're talking about weightlifting, reps in reserve is just a way of measuring intensity, how heavy something should be. So you could use an absolute intensity, like 85% of your 1 rep max on the bar. So if the most you could bench press is 100 pounds, 85% be 85 pounds. That's pretty heavy weight. You could only do that maybe 5 times. Reps in reserve is a way for somebody without a percentage to like go, okay, this is going to be heavy. I should only be able to do 3 more reps before I fail. That means it's going to be heavy. So in AIM7, we use reps in reserve because I'm not going to go ask some 55-year-old guy that's just getting back into weightlifting. The first thing I want you to do is go get on the leg press and max out, and then go to the bench press and max. That's not a good idea. Reps in reserve is a way for somebody to be able to be like, okay, and over time you're going to get better at gauging intensity. There should be like in baseball, there should be times where you have all out, like we're running bases and it should be all out.
Oh yeah.
But we're going to have a lot of recovery between your reps, because if I go back to back to back to back, that's not game speed. Because for every rep that you continue to do consecutively, the output goes down because they're not as fresh. So if we ran, a double, then we may need to rest 3 or 4 minutes before they do another one, if the point is to do this at speed. So most of the time, practice, it's a whole other topic here, but like practices are at medium tempo, because everybody's like, go as hard as you can. Well, you don't have the biological ability to do 100 reps back to your output slowly diminishing. But what's a game in football, for instance? 5 to 6 plays followed by a 10-minute rest. Go sit your butt on the bench, come back and do it again. Baseball, I may sprint to first, chill, sprint, chill. Outfield, like you may do nothing for an entire like 3 innings. Nothing's coming your way. Maybe you got to back up, but it's like, and then all of a sudden, boom. So building aerobic capacity is important, but like you got to look at what are the requirements of the game, and then logically reverse engineer the process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Last little topic. Well, I mean, I have about 47 more things that I want to talk to you about, but we'll end on this one, which is this idea of being mentally fit. What does that mean to you? Also, I mean, you can mix in psychological flexibility there with it too, but just that whole idea that you've been talking about.
Yeah, mental fitness is the ability to be consciously present and to process information without bias, so that you can take consistent actions anchored in your values and training. So that means that like you're aware of what's actually going on in the environment, what's inputs that are coming in. And then instead of responding in a reactionary way, where like you can actually react in a way that's anchored in the training that you went through or your personal values. So think about times where you really just blew it as a human being. Like typically you go, oh, I wish I didn't say that, because that's not aligned with who I am. You weren't mentally fit. You got caught up in your emotions. You weren't processing information. You weren't aware. So as Dr. Peter Haberl says, attention is the currency of performance. What you want is control of your attention.
Mm.
So a mentally fit person has control of their attention and can take actions anchored in their training and in their values. In football, we used to say you're either trained or untrained. It's one of two things. It applies to everything. You're either a great accountant and you're trained at it, or you're untrained and you're not very good. Then once you're trained, can you do it under pressure? Can you do it over and over and over and over again? And that's what elite looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if I had 200 at bats against a major league pitcher, I'm going to make contact once. And let's say I got a single. And that's all you did was take a snapshot of that. You're like, dude, this guy should be in the league. I think you watch the 199 misses. I'm not a lead. I'm lucky.
Yeah.
So, and then psychological flexibility is basically it's more about being mentally resilient, and being able to work skillfully with your mind.
I do a lot of work in the mental health field, and I've been saying for a while that mental health needs to be rebranded to be sexier, because the more sexy it is, the more people are going to be willing to start being proactive about it. And because mental health is attached to this bias that people immediately think of like a crazy depressed person. And that's just not what mental health is. There are certain mental health conditions that are very severe, and those are in a different bucket than I think what we're talking about right now. But mental health, generally speaking, is just how you think, feel, and act. And so to rebrand it in a sexier way, like mental fitness or mental wellness, I think is more encouraging for people to do the necessary skills and habits to be more psychologically flexible, or to be more resilient, or to be more calm under pressure, or to be more confident. All of these things are just trainable, learnable skills, but they've been attached to mental health, which is seen as this like thing that I don't want to look at or near. It's like this dark corner that I can't go near. But really, it's just this thing that we all have that's part of us trying to flourish as human beings. So more people like you who are talking about it in a way that's like cool. Like, hey, the best people that I know are taking care of their mentals. They're doing mindfulness training. They're breathing. They're journaling. They're doing gratitude exercises. They're exercising. They're going for walks. All of these things impact my mind and my body. And so when we can start making it like sexier, like real sexy, then everyone's going to be inclined to want to take care of it. Then when we do have those really severe issues like extreme depression or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, people are then also more inclined to ask for help, because that's when you need, medical intervention or a psychiatrist or whatever the case may be. But we're more inclined to ask for that help because we've been a society now that has this idea that we should take care of our mind and our body as sort of one piece.
I love it, man. I think you're right that when it sounds weird, people don't want to do it. So make it more attractive. It's just marketing, and hook people with what they think they need and give them what they need.
Yes, that's the tagline right there. Beautiful.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, thank you for this conversation, Dr. Erik. I appreciate you. Everything that you do, your podcast, your newsletter, AIM7 will all be linked in the show notes below. So that's where people can go and find you. You're all over social media. You post great content on Instagram, which is where I found you. So
thank you.
Maybe one of these days we'll link up to do something in person.
I would love that. We're fellow Texans, and I would love to. I think it would be great to hang out. I think we're cut from the same cloth. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come on today. It's been a blessing. I can tell that you really care about what you're doing, and I think we need more people out there like you making an impact.
Well, much appreciated, my friend. And cheers, everyone. See y'all next time. Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.